All right, welcome back, everyone. We've got quite the variety of articles to dig into this time.
Yeah, this is a fun one.
Yeah, it's a good mix. We've got cutting-edge car tech and then kind of an unexpected adventure in space.
Yeah, it's quite the contrast.
Yeah. So we're talking 48-volt systems in vehicles. That's from Off-Road 4x4, their piece from November 25th. And then we're going to be talking about, well, let's just say a bit of a smelly situation on the ISS. That's from Future Tech World on the 26th.
Looking forward to that one.
Yeah. Okay, so these 48-volt systems, it sounds like they're not just like a little upgrade to what we already have in cars.
Right.
They're kind of being presented as this like next evolution of how our vehicles perform.
Yeah, I think the Off-Road 4x4 article does a really good job of laying out why this shift is happening.
Yeah.
Because like it or not, traditional 12-volt systems, they're just not cutting it anymore.
Really? Why is that?
Well, think about all the demands we put on our cars these days. All the electronics, the sensors, driver assistance system.
All screen.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot more than just the radio and the headlights like it used to be. It's basically like we're trying to run a small city on a AA battery.
Uh-huh. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So these 48-volt systems, they're like giving our cars a major power boost.
And that translates to what, like faster acceleration, better fuel economy?
Yeah, all that good stuff.
The article mentioned something about regenerative braking. What is that exactly?
So normally when you hit the brakes, all that energy just gets lost as heat, right?
I guess so.
Well, with regenerative braking, the system captures that energy and uses it to recharge the battery. Pretty neat, huh?
So you're basically recycling energy that would have been wasted. That's pretty cool.
It is, and it's just one example of what becomes possible with this higher voltage.
I'm guessing this ties into the whole mild hybrid thing the article kept mentioning.
Yeah, exactly.
But what does that even mean for like a regular person driving one of these cars?
Essentially, it means the car can run on electric power alone in certain situations, like when you're coasting or at low speeds.
So it's not a fully electric car.
No.
It's like...
It's a step in that direction.
Yeah. Right.
And this actually allows manufacturers to use smaller, more efficient gas engines,
Okay.
which further reduces fuel consumption. So it's kind of like a bridge between traditional combustion engines and a fully electric future.
And they said that the 48-volt system lets them do that, like use the smaller engine.
It makes it much more feasible, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. But I did notice that in the comment section, not everyone was sold on this whole 48-volt thing.
Yeah.
Some people were worried about the cost and complexity of it all.
Sure. I mean, it's understandable to be a little skeptical when it comes to new technology, especially when it has the potential to, affect how much we're spending on our vehicles.
Right.
But you have to consider the potential benefits too, right? Like for drivers, but also for the environment.
Yeah, I mean...
It's a complex issue, and the technology is still developing, so it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, totally. But okay, before we go too deep down the rabbit hole of car tech, let's shift gears to something completely different.
Right.
Let's talk about the ISS and this odor incident.
This is a good one.
It's a weird one.
So we've got the Russian Progress 90 spacecraft, and apparently it had a bit of a mishap.
A mishap.
Yeah, a little more than a mishap. It caused a delay in one of the missions.
Oh, wow, that's not good.
Not good at all. And what's interesting is that this isn't the first time we've seen problems with Russian spacecraft recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, back in December of 22 and then again in February of 23, they had coolant leaks.
It's starting to sound like a pattern.
Yeah, definitely raises some questions about reliability.
Okay, but back to this odor thing. What could possibly smell so bad in space that they had to delay a mission?
Right, that's the crazy part. The astronauts actually had to put on protective gear because of it. Like, what could be that potent?
Yeah, what is floating around up there?
Well, the article mentions a couple of possibilities. One is, and this is where it gets a little technical, volatile organic compounds, VOCs for short, leaking from the spacecraft's fuel tanks.
Okay, for those of us who don't have a PhD in rocket science, what exactly are VOCs?
So VOCs are chemicals found in lots of everyday things. Paint, cleaning supplies, even new furniture.
Okay.
And while they might not always be super noticeable here on Earth, in a closed environment like the ISS, even small amounts can cause problems. Headaches, dizziness, that sort of thing.
So it's not just about a bad smell. It could actually be dangerous.
Right, exactly. And get this, the article also suggests another possibility: biological contamination.
What, like space mold?
It might sound strange.
It does.
Because, bacteria and mold are incredibly adaptable, so it's not entirely impossible that they could be thriving on the ISS as well.
Wow, I mean, that's kind of terrifying.
It definitely adds a whole new layer of complexity to space travel.
Yeah, it's like you're not just dealing with mechanical failures up there. You've got microscopic invaders to worry about, too.
Yeah, and it really underscores the importance of, all those safety protocols and risk assessments they have in place for space travel.
Right, because when you're hundreds of miles above Earth, even a seemingly small problem can become a major headache.
Very true. So this whole odor incident, as strange as it might seem, it's actually a really good reminder of just how delicate the balance is in space.
And how much we still have to learn about long-term space habitation.
Exactly.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we've got these two stories. One, pushing the boundaries of technology here on Earth, and the other, exposing the vulnerabilities of human life in space. Kind of a wild combination, don't you think?
Absolutely.
But it's also pretty thought-provoking.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, it makes you think about what progress really means.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it just about the newest gadgets and pushing limits, or is there something more to it?
Right. And what are the potential costs of that progress? Both in terms of, economics and the impact on people's lives, but also the risks involved.
That's like...
It's a bigger picture kind of thing.
It is.
And I think that's something we'll explore more as we dive deeper into these stories.
Right, because there's a lot more to unpack here. And I'm already hooked, so I can't wait to see what else we uncover.
Yeah, me too.
All right, well, let's take a quick break, and we'll be back to go even deeper in just a bit. Okay, we're back, and I gotta say, I'm still kind of stuck on that whole ISS thing.
Yeah, it's a wild one for sure.
Like, imagine being in that situation.
I know, right?
You can't just, open a window.
Exactly. You're in this sealed environment, and
Yeah.
suddenly there's a mystery smell.
And it's so bad, you gotta wear, hazmat gear.
It really makes you appreciate how much we rely on our sense of smell,
Yeah, totally. Like, here on Earth, I guess we kind of take it for granted.
Absolutely. But in space, a weird smell, that's a huge red flag. Could mean danger.
Right, because it could mean something seriously wrong with the life support or something. Okay, but going back to the 48-volt systems, I was reading through the Off-Road 4x4 article again, and they were talking about how this tech isn't just about making existing features better.
Yeah.
It's about creating entirely new features.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, what kind of stuff are we talking about here?
Well, they mentioned electric superchargers as a possibility.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pretty cool, right?
That sounds super high-tech.
So, you know how a regular turbocharger uses exhaust gases to spin a turbine?
Yeah.
Well, an electric supercharger uses a powerful electric motor to do the same thing, so you get that boost even more efficiently.
So it's like a turbocharger, but electric. That's pretty neat.
It is, and it's just one example of the possibilities that open up with this higher voltage.
But they also mentioned some concerns about how this whole 48-volt shift might impact the car industry, right?
Yeah, that's something that definitely needs to be considered.
Like, what kind of impact are we talking about?
Well, there's the worry that increased reliance on electronics and these high voltage batteries could lead to job losses in traditional manufacturing sectors.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Whenever you have a big technological change like this, there's going to be some disruption.
Right. And I think it's important to acknowledge that and to think about, how we can support those who might be affected by these changes.
Right.
But it's also worth remembering that technological advancements often create new opportunities too.
Okay.
Like, look at renewable energy. It's disrupting traditional fossil fuel industries, but it's also creating tons of new jobs in areas like solar, wind, battery technology.
So it's not necessarily about losing jobs.
Right.
It's about different jobs.
Exactly. The skills that are in demand are going to shift.
I see.
And this transition to 48-volt systems, it's likely to create a huge need for engineers, software developers, technicians, people who specialize in these new technologies.
It's like, okay, one door is closing, but a bunch of new doors are opening at the same time.
I like that analogy. It's about adaptation. Right?
Yeah. Okay, but let's switch back to that ISS situation for a minute. We were talking about those two possible causes for the odor,
right?
The VOCs and the mold. Let's start with the VOCs.
Okay, so what's tricky about VOCs is that the effects of exposure can be really varied. Some people might just have a headache or itchy eyes.
Yeah.
But for others, especially people with asthma or other respiratory problems, it could be way more serious.
So it's not just a temporary annoyance.
Yeah.
It could have long-term health consequences.
Yeah, and in a confined space like the ISS where there's limited ventilation, even low levels of VOCs could become a problem.
Right, because you can't exactly escape it.
Exactly.
Okay, but what about the mold? That whole thing is just
Yeah, it's a little unsettling, for sure.
What makes mold so dangerous in space specifically?
Well, it's the spores. Mold releases these tiny spores into the air. And if you breathe them in, they can trigger all sorts of issues. Some people are allergic, so they might have sneezing, coughing, skin rashes.
Right.
But it can also lead to respiratory infections, especially for people with weakened immune systems.
So it's not just about keeping things clean.
Right.
It's about preventing serious health risks.
Exactly. And it raises a lot of questions about, how we're going to manage these kinds of challenges on longer space missions.
Yeah, like what if this happens on the way to Mars?
Right. You're talking about months or even years in space
Yeah.
with limited resources and no easy way to get back to Earth.
So this odor incident,
Yeah.
as weird as it
It's
is,
a good learning experience.
it is. It's like a wake-up call to really think about the potential problems we could face in space.
Yeah. It forces us to step up our game when it comes to safety protocols and risk management.
Because even something that seems minor at first,
Yeah.
like a smell.
It could have major consequences.
Okay, so we've got these two stories. One about pushing technological boundaries here on Earth, and the other about the challenges of human life in space. They seem pretty different, but I feel like there's a connection there.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, what is it about these stories that you think makes them so interesting?
Well, for me, it's that they both highlight the interplay between human ambition, technological innovation, and our constant need to adapt to the unexpected.
Like, we're always pushing the limits of what's possible.
Right.
And in doing so, we're bound to run into some surprises along the way.
And those surprises can be exciting, but they can also be a bit daunting,
Yeah, totally. It's like we're learning as we go.
Exactly. And that learning process, that's what drives progress.
All right, well, as we head into the final part of our deep dive, I'm really curious to explore what these stories tell us about the future and what role we all play in shaping it.
Me too. It's a big topic, but I think it's an important one.
Okay, so here we are, the final stretch of our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, from those 48-volt vehicles and all the potential and anxieties around them.
Yeah, a lot to think about there.
And then that whole ISS odor mystery.
Yeah.
It really highlighted just how complex and, well, delicate life in space can be.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that even with all our technological advances, we're still figuring things out when it comes to space travel.
Big time. And it kind of makes you think about how we define progress.
Right, like what does it actually mean? Is it just about pushing the boundaries of technology, or is there something more to it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because as we've seen with both of these stories, progress isn't always like a smooth upward trajectory.
Right, there are going to be bumps in the road, unexpected detours.
And sometimes, yeah, those detours involve some pretty funky smells.
Exactly.
But I think those bumps, those unexpected challenges, they force us to confront some important questions.
Totally. Like with the 48-volt systems, yeah, there are potential benefits for drivers, but what about the people who work in those traditional car manufacturing jobs?
Right, exactly. It's like, okay, this new tech might be cool,
Yeah.
but who benefits from it and who might end up getting left behind?
It's a valid question, and it's one that we need to be asking more and more as technology continues to evolve at such a rapid pace.
Because it's not just about the technology itself, right? It's about the people who are impacted by it.
Yeah, their jobs, their health, their hopes for the future. That human element is a crucial part of the equation.
Absolutely. And I think that's where the ISS story becomes really relevant. Because in space, that human element is even more amplified.
Oh, for sure.
Every system, every tiny detail has a direct impact on the astronaut's well-being.
Right, there's no room for error.
And that odor, as unpleasant as it must have been, it served as a really stark reminder that we're still a long way from mastering long-term space habitation.
Totally. Like, we can't just assume technology will solve every problem we encounter in space.
Right? We need to be prepared for the unexpected. We need ingenuity, we need adaptability.
And a good dose of caution, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. It's like we can be excited about all the possibilities that space exploration offers,
Yeah.
but we also need to be aware of the potential risks involved.
I think that applies to any kind of progress, whether it's in space or here on Earth.
It does. So where does that leave us? I mean, we've talked about these two seemingly unrelated stories, but it feels like they're both pointing to something bigger.
I think they are. They're both about this idea of pushing boundaries, but doing so in a way that's thoughtful and responsible.
Because progress for the sake of progress, that's not always a good thing.
Exactly. It's about considering the consequences, both the positive and the negative.
And it's about having those tough conversations, like what kind of future are we building? And who are we building it for?
I think that's the key takeaway here. We can't just be passive consumers of technology. We need to be active participants in shaping how it's developed and how it's used.
Right, because ultimately technology is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
It all depends on the choices we make.
So I guess the question is, what choices are we going to make? What kind of future do we want to create?
Yeah, those are the questions we need to be grappling with. And I think that's a good place to leave our conversation today.
It is. We've explored some really interesting topics, raised some important questions, and hopefully sparked some thought-provoking conversations.
Absolutely.
So to everyone who's been listening along with us, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
Keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and most importantly, keep learning. Until next time,